Welcome to the third session of the Dissertation Club. In this session, we will discuss the literature review chapter of your dissertation. In this session, we will define a literature review. Then we will look at 3 common approaches to writing a literature review. Number 1, interrogating your chosen model, framework, or theory. Number 2, finding a specific model, framework, or theory to analyze your data. And number 3, situating your research. Just below this video in the description box, you could download these templates of a critical literature review. Template 1 is on page 2, template 2 is on page 4, and template 3 is on page 7. Just to start things off, what is a literature review? What comes to mind when you hear the words literature review? You can let me know in the chat section or on the mic. So this is a metaphor to help you think about writing a literature review. You are about to go on a research journey to find new knowledge, but before you go, you need to pack your suitcase with the existing knowledge. Not any knowledge, just the relevant knowledge from your research area. When we go on a journey, we only want to take what we need. A good suitcase should only contain relevant items. A bad suitcase contains everything or nothing relevant. Likewise, a good literature review contains only relevant studies. A bad literature review contains everything. You do not need to discuss all the literature. You do not need to discuss every single book and every single article. This would be a big mistake. You should only discuss books and articles that directly relate to your research aim. You need to be selective. The marker does not want to see a shopping list of studies, only the relevant studies. Amongst the most important paragraphs in your literature review are the introduction and conclusion paragraphs. The introduction paragraph is important because it states the purpose of your literature review. It's very important. In the first paragraph of your literature review, you need to state the purpose of your literature review, and we will go through that in more detail. Your literature review must have a specific purpose. You need to explicitly explain why you are reviewing the literature. Then at the end of the literature review chapter, the conclusion section is also important because you state the clarity that you have gained from reviewing the literature. You do not
After
need
reviewing
to
all
discuss
of these
all
books
the
and
literature.
articles,
You do not
you are
need
in
to
a better
discuss
place.
every
You have
single
more
book
knowledge
and
now.
every
You can
single
see
article.
clearly
This
now.
would be a big
You
mistake.
explain this in
You should
your
only
conclusion.
discuss books and
Explain the
articles
clarity that you now
directly
have.
relate
So
to your
here's an
research
example.
aim. You need to be selective.
So in this
The marker does
introduction,
not
the
want to see a
introduction
shopping list
explains
of
the aim
studies,
of the literature
only the
review.
relevant studies. This chapter will review the relevant areas of the management literature to find a suitable theoretical framework to use for this project. Very simple aim, very straightforward aim. This student wanted to find a suitable framework to use for their dissertation. And in the conclusion, they stated the clarity that they have achieved. They found a suitable framework to use for their project. Thornlow's framework of planned behavior. You need to show this journey of enlightenment from the initial aim to achieving your aim. You have reached the promised land now, and you have a newfound clarity that will shape your study. This is what the marker is looking for. You need to demonstrate that you have been impacted by the literature. You need to show growth. You need to show that you have achieved your aim. So there are 3 approaches to writing a literature review. These are the most common approaches, but I'm sure there are many more, and you can adapt these approaches, combine these approaches, or use other approaches. There's no compulsion here. So number 1, to interrogate the suitability of your chosen theory or your chosen model or your chosen framework or your chosen concept. This approach is on page 2 of the template. This approach is only for students that will mostly use one concept or one framework or one theory or one model to analyze their data. You may mention other concepts and other theories here and there, but you are married to one. 60 to 70% of your time, you are engaging with just one theory, one model, or one framework. So you have to imagine that you are this person, you are the interrogator, and you wish to interrogate one specific theory or one specific model or specific framework to see if it is suitable to analyze your data. You may want to use this theory or model or concept as a lens to look at a particular practice or you may want to use it to look at a particular sector, or you want to use it to look at behavior, or you want to use it to observe a particular target group. But before you use this theory or model, you need to interrogate it. You need to assess to see if it is suitable. This student last year, her concept that she was using was cultural fit. So she needs to interrogate or review the literature on cultural fit to see if cultural fit is suitable to analyze the selection and assessment practices. So the student started her literature review by stating that this was her focus. So this chapter will review the literature on the cultural fit model to assess its suitability to analyze the selection and assessment practices of advertising agencies. This is the template of the first approach. And this, as I said, this template is on page 2. So 3.0, start with an introduction. In your literature review, you'll need the introduction paragraph. So 3.0, state the aim of your literature review and provide an overview, very brief, 1 or 2 sentences. It doesn't have to be too long. Then 3.1, the development of the theory, model, framework, or concept. So in this section, you document the chronological development of the concept, theory, or model that you have selected. What are the roots of it? What are the foundations of it? Where is it from? Then 3.2, you mentioned the benefits of using the theory, model, or framework or concept. So in this section, you state the benefits of using this approach, state the advantages of using this approach, state the justification or rationale for using this approach, mention all the positives, all the good stuff. Then this is contrasted by 3.3, the shortcomings of using this theory or model or framework. What are the criticisms of using this theory or model? What are the limitations? In this section, mention all the negatives, all the bad stuff, but make sure it's not too negative. Why do you need to avoid being too negative in this section? Because if the model or theory was that bad, then the question is, why are you using it? So we only mention the negatives to show that all models and theories are not perfect, because they can never mimic our real life. Real life is too dynamic, it's too disordered, it's too chaotic, it's too messy to observe. Theories and models are just a simplification of real life, but it's not real life. For example, we use the model of 24 hours in a day because it helps us plan and live our lives. But there are not actually 24 hours in every day. Sometimes there are 23 hours and 58 minutes. Sometimes there are 24 hours and 2 minutes in a day. So models and theories do not match up to real life. So you have to critique it. That goes not just for this, but your assignment. So whenever you mention a theory or model, it's always good to add a critique or two. And then 3.4, a very important section. In this section, mention studies that use this concept or theory or model to observe a similar situation to your research focus. So maybe your dissertation is using critical race theory to look at the recruitment process. Are there any other studies that use critical race theory to look at the recruitment process? How is this theory or model used in other studies? Are these other studies adequate? Are these other studies inadequate? What do you need to add on to these other studies? So this is situating your research with existing studies. And then 3.5. Now we are coming to the most important section. So 3.5, this research is utilization of the theory, model, framework, or concept. In this section, you state how the literature has impacted your research. So you have read all of the relevant literature, you've read all of the relevant books and articles, you have packed your suitcase, you have clarity now. So now explain how you will utilize this theory in your research. How will you utilize this model in your research? Considering how it's been used in the past and how you will use it now. And 3.6, the adaptation of the theory, model, or framework, another important and critical section. As we said, models, theories, and concepts are not real life. So you need to show criticality by adapting and slightly changing and tweaking your chosen model, theory, or concept to suit your specific needs. Because it's not one size fits all. Your scenario is unique. Your research is unique. So it demands that you edit, adapt, and tweak some aspect of the model, theory, or concept and explain your rationale for doing this. Maybe you've seen parts of another model elsewhere that you want to stick onto your chosen model. Or you saw how one particular scholar used it differently and you want to use the model like him or her. So the adaptation is a very critical part of your literature review. Whatever model you use, you need to slightly tweak it, slightly change it, slightly adapt it to suit the needs of your research. Because as I said, your research is unique and that model is general. So you'll need to do that work. And finally, you'll just end with a conclusion that summarizes your main points, summarize the clarity that you have gained, and escort the reader to the next chapter. Please download the template for this approach. You'll find the download just below this video. The second approach, which is to find a suitable framework or model or theory or concept to use for your research. So this approach is on page 4 of the template that I've just sent to you. So in this situation, you do not know which framework or model to use for your research. So essentially, you're going in there blind. Reading the literature, you find that there are 2, 3, or 5 different approaches or frameworks or models to choose from. You are spoiled for choice. So you want to assess each model or each framework to see if it is best for you. A metaphor to describe this approach is an interview. You are interviewing several candidates for the position. You want to assess if they are suitable for the position. Your project is about time management, and you find that there are several models for time management. So you interview the ABC model of time management. Then you interview the PPP.
Just below this video in the description box,
Covey's
you can
time
download
management
the
grid.
template for this approach.
Then you interview Eisenhower's matrix. Then you interview the Alpen method. So you go through each of these models until you find a winner or a successful candidate to use for your research. So you explore all of these different models to see if it is suitable for your research. Is that clear, everyone? The concept. We'll go into more depth, but is the concept clear? So here are the 5 interview questions for your model, theory, concept, or framework. Number 1, what was the development? Number 2, what does the literature say about the benefits? Number 3, what does the literature say about the shortcomings, the problems, the limitations? Number 4, how has it been used in the literature? And number 5, is it suitable for your study? If it is suitable for your study, explain why. If it is not suitable for your study, then explain why. Number 5 is the most important question. In this question, this is where you make your assessment. And repeat this process for each model, framework, theory, or concept. The exact same 5 questions and the exact same 5 questions. So you repeat this process for every model or theory or concept or framework that you use. Please refer to template 2 for a more detailed breakdown of this approach. So the last approach is to review the development of a subject area in order to situate your research. This approach is on page 7 of the template. So you want to find a place to situate your research. You want to find where your research will be best appreciated. You want to place your research in a particular tradition. You are extending the work of those that came before you. You may do this by identifying a gap, then fitting your research into that gap. Or maybe you have identified an exciting trend, a new trend or an old trend in the literature. So you want your research to be part of this trend. Maybe you've seen a trend of studies that applies a critical focus, and you believe your work also applies a critical focus. So you want to show how your research will complement this area. You want to show how your research will add to this area.
For example, you start in 1960. For some reason, most models and theories were developed in this time period. So Johnson's study in 1960. Then you discuss Smith's influential study in 1975. Then 20 years later, Jones's monumental study in 1995. Then you discuss Gin's 2005 model, which continues to impact and influence the literature. So you discuss everything that came before you. Then finally, you bring the icing on top of the cake, your study in 2023. You've come to add to what came before you.
So in the first section, you provide a chronological account of the main text and the main developments of the subject area. Just show the highlights, the main text, not every single text, just the main and prominent text. Just like match of the day. You know, you don't see the whole game, you just see the highlights. So for instance, your subject area is female mentors, female mentors working in the IT industry. So you will discuss the main texts of female mentors working in the IT industry, the main theories and the main models of female mentors working in the IT industry, the key discussion points of female mentors in the IT industry, just the key discussion points, not everything, just the key moments. And also any contextual factors or real life events that may have impacted the literature on female mentors in the IT industry. For example, like COVID. How did COVID impact the literature on or working from home? Did that impact the literature on female mentors working in the IT industry? So not only looking at the industry, but looking at world events, and did they impact the literature? Did they shape the literature? So maybe from now you will see much more studies that are looking at working from home, whereas we didn't see that 3 or 4 years ago. So chart the development of this subject area. But maybe your literature has not been affected by outside forces, so don't worry about that. But if you've seen slight changes and tweaks, like for instance, like my background was international law. So when 9/11 happened, that changed the face of international law. Like it had a real effect and real impact on international law. So any outside factors that impact literature is also important. They like when you connect the literature to the real world. How did the real world impact or affect the literature? And then after this section, like I said, all of this is in the template. You outline the areas that need improvement. After reading the literature, you've identified the limitations of the literature as a whole, not individual studies. This is important. You should see the literature as one body of work. This is a skill of a critical thinker, that you're able to see individual books and articles as one body of literature. All of these books and articles provided you with the information for your study. So you see them as one body of literature. And so identified any limitations or needed improvements in this one body. And the reason that you do this is for critical analysis marks, and also to position your research as a means to rectify this body of literature. To rectify the limitations, point out the limitations, helps to situate your research. It makes your research special now. Your research will rectify this body of knowledge. So the body of knowledge is all of the articles and books that impacted your study. So try to see it as one thing. And what can this and what can improve this one thing? Is that clear, guys? It's very conceptual point, but I hope you guys can understand what I mean by this. And then the third area, this is where you situate your research within the discourse. So the third area is where you situate your research on top of the existing body of literature. You are standing on the shoulders of those that came before you. You are carrying on the baton. Explain how your research will enhance the body of literature. Or maybe your research will take the body of literature in a different direction. Maybe that's your critique about this body of literature. We need to go in this other direction, especially maybe there's a new development. I don't know if you're looking at AI or ChatGPT, and that's moved the discussion in another area. Or maybe your research will expand the current body of literature. So like I just discussed with someone regarding their research, the body of literature did not cover ethnic minorities. So they are taking this body of literature in a new direction. So always explicitly state that. If you can explicitly state that, they really appreciate that you acknowledge what came before you, but you're going to pivot, you're going to slightly move the literature in a different direction because it's needed. And this is the last of the templates. It says number 4, but it's number 3. It's the last of the template. So is this last template clear? I think most people would choose this template above the 1 and 2. Or let me know, guys, which template did you lean towards? The interrogation, or the looking at the various theories and models, or this one where you're situating your research, the situation of your research? Your number 3. I think number 3 is most in line with what people are doing and everything. But like I said, number 1 and 2 is fine. All of them are fine. Maybe you've got another approach, or I said maybe you want to combine these approaches. A blend of 2 and 3. I like that. I like when students do that. Brilliant, care. Yeah, blend 2 and 3. I think the third one is much wider and better approach. Yeah, number 3. That's fine. Yeah, definitely. 2 and 3. Yeah, I like that. I like that people are blending different approaches.